Welcome to This Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're joining us today because we're going to unpack a holiday that, well, you probably celebrate every single year. But honestly, I guarantee you don't know the full story behind it. Today we're looking at the surprisingly difficult and uniquely female-driven history of Father's Day. We're going to explore how this holiday fought a massive uphill battle for national recognition in the US, and then we'll take a really fascinating world tour to see how it's celebrated so uniquely across the globe.
Okay, let's dive into this, because there is a striking piece of irony here. Think about it. Mother's Day was swiftly embraced and made an official U.S. holiday way back in 1914. But Father's Day? It completely languished in legislative limbo for decades, totally unrecognized by the federal government until 1972. You gotta wonder, why did it take 58 years longer to officially honor dads? Well, the answer is full of societal pushback, shifting gender roles, and a whole lot of commercial fears.
So here's our journey for today's explainer. We'll start with the holiday's grassroots origins with the unsung heroines, look at the decades-long struggle to make it official, compare mothers versus fathers, and then take that world tour of modern global traditions before wrapping up with the modern father.
Starting right off with Section 1, the unsung heroines. Now, it might really surprise you to learn that the biggest, most vocal advocates for a day honoring men were actually women. Driven by deep love and, in some cases, profound tragedy, women were the primary champions pushing for Father's Day.
This grassroots movement didn't just happen overnight. It happened in distinct waves. Back in 1908, Grace Golden Clayton proposed a special church service after a horrific mining disaster in West Virginia left hundreds of children fatherless. Then, a couple years later, in 1910, a woman named Sonora Smart Dodd made massive waves by organizing an official celebration in Spokane, Washington. Jump ahead to 1921. And you've got three women from Chesterfield, Virginia, Mrs. E.A. Swineford, Kate R. Swineford, and Ruby G. Winfrey, who actually obtained a charter to found the National Father's Day Association.
Now, to be fair, the very earliest record we have of a child honoring their dad is literally a 4,000-year-old Babylonian clay tablet wishing a father good health. But this modern push in America, it came from a place of deep personal devotion. Like Sonora Smart Dodd, she was inspired by her dad, William Jackson Smart. He was a Civil War veteran and a single father who raised 6 kids after his wife died in childbirth. The love he showed absolutely inspired her to fight for this day. And those women in Chesterfield I mentioned, they even proposed that the original symbol of the holiday should be wearing a red flower on the 3rd Sunday in June.
Moving into our second section, a decades-long struggle. Here is the ultimate historical irony for you. The absolute biggest pushback against creating a day to honor fathers actually came from men themselves. No way, right?
But it's true. In the early 20th century, a lot of men firmly rejected the idea. They literally scoffed at efforts to, and I quote, domesticate manliness. They looked at Mother's Day, which was heavily framed around femininity, sentimentality, and flowers, and they just didn't want any part of it. Plus, in a heavily patriarchal society, men viewed themselves as authority figures who already ran the household. They were like, why do we need a special day? Many just completely dismissed the whole thing as a commercial gimmick. Because of all that resistance, the road to legitimacy was a total slow crawl. It was heavily influenced by economics and war. President Calvin Coolidge urged states to observe it in 1924, but it still wasn't law. During the Great Depression, struggling retailers really leaned into it, pushing practical gifts to stimulate the economy. Then, during World War II, it gained major traction as a way to honor fathers serving in the military. Still, it wasn't until 1966 that President Lyndon B. Johnson issued an executive order. And finally, in 1972, President Richard Nixon officially signed Father's Day into permanent law.
Which brings us to Section 3, Mothers versus Fathers. Because of how these two holidays developed, we still celebrate them very differently today, starting with that legislative and cultural head start.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is this massive number 58. Because Mother's Day had a 58-year legislative head start. It had over half a century to establish deep cultural roots, shape commercial patterns, and set really high societal expectations before Father's Day was ever officially recognized. Forgetting Mother's Day, that's usually seen as a massive misstep. But Father's Day traditionally carries just a bit less social pressure.
And this brilliantly illustrates the difference in how we gift. For Mother's Day, families tend to lean heavily into emotional weight, sentimentality, gratitude, and higher spending. We're talking flowers, jewelry, and spa days. But for Father's Day, the focus is all about practical items, simplicity, and humor. People buy tools, outdoor gear, electronics, and overall, they generally spend a bit less. While mom might get a fancy brunch out, dad is often celebrated with a laid-back backyard barbecue, or maybe a relaxed fishing trip.
All right, let's transition to Section 4 and take a global tour of Father's Day traditions. While the US, the UK, and Canada celebrate on the third Sunday in June, the dates globally vary wildly. Like in Catholic Europe, it's often celebrated on March 19th for St. Joseph's Day. Down in Australia, it falls on the first Sunday in September. Let's look at a few really fascinating examples.
Let's start over in Germany with Vatertag. What's amazing here is that their Father's Day is historically tied to the Christian holiday of Ascension Day. Back in the 16th century, people would take to the fields to pray for a fruitful harvest, and then naturally celebrate with ale and mead.
The evolution of this tradition is just wild. Back in the 18th century, mayors would actually award prizes, usually a massive ham, to the men in the village who had fathered the most children. Today, though, it is an all-out outdoor party. Men gather in parks and forests, pulling elaborately decorated handcarts just filled with beer. Some groups even build fully furnished bars on wheels, complete with tap systems, stereos, and barbecue grills. It's quite the lively celebration for sure. Now contrast that with Thailand, where Father's Day is a deeply reverent occasion tied directly to their royalty.
In Thailand, the nation celebrates on December 5th. That's the birthday of the beloved king Bhumibol Adulyadej, who is literally considered the father of the nation. Citizens traditionally wear yellow because yellow is the official color of Monday, the day of the week the king was born. And instead of buying tools or electronics, children present their fathers with a canna flower, which is considered a distinctly masculine plant in their culture.
Next, let's travel to Nepal for a deeply spiritual tradition known as Gokarna Aunsi. This one happens in late August or September, depending on the lunar calendar. The name of this holiday beautifully translates to Day for Looking at Father's Face. It's just a profound time of respect that honors both living and deceased fathers. Families make pilgrimages to specific sacred sites depending on their faith. Hindus will visit the Shiva temple of Gokarna Mahadev, while Buddhists pay their respects at the John Bahal temple. It's a gorgeous reflection on lineage and love. And just to quickly round out our global tour, look at the sheer variety out there. In Mexico City, families celebrate by gathering for a massive 21-kilometer race in the Bosque de Tlalpan. Over in Japan, it's customary to feast on crab or prawns and gift dad handmade beer glasses. And in Brazil, the holiday falls on St. Joaquim's Day, where families hold huge all-you-can-eat barbecues featuring massive skewers of roasted beef, pork, and chicken. Sounds amazing, honestly. Finally, we arrive at Section 5, the modern father. You know, the way we celebrate has evolved so much because the very definition of fatherhood has transformed drastically since those early pushbacks in the 1920s. So, the crucial point is this. Father's Day today reflects a massive cultural shift. Modern dads are no longer defined solely as those stoic breadwinners who rule the house from a distance. They're emotional anchors, they're caregivers, they're active partners in the home. Whether a dad loves building Lego castles, reading bedtime stories, or grilling in the backyard, the holiday now celebrates the incredibly diverse, hands-on ways men show up for their kids. And the impact of this modern, active fatherhood, it's scientifically proven. Academic research, like studies published in journals such as the International Journal of Indian Psychology, reveals that a father's active involvement actually reduces juvenile delinquency. It significantly improves a child's social, emotional, and cognitive development. It literally helps them build confidence and socialization skills. The active presence of a dad isn't just nice to have, it's an absolutely foundational pillar for a child's successful growth.
Which brings us to the end of our explainer. We've seen how Father's Day evolved from the tragic aftermath of a mining disaster, pushed forward by determined women, resisting the scoffs of early 20th century men, to become this beautiful global celebration of active, loving caregivers. Thank you so much for watching and exploring this with me today. I'm going to leave you with this final thought to reflect on. As the role of fathers continues to evolve in our modern world, how will your family's traditions change next year? See you next time.